So I think we're going to kick it off with just kind of a little bit of a background in terms of, what are some examples of why OSHA might come calling at your door?
So you want basically, we're talking about if a shop coming to the shop. We're not talking about out on site, but we're talking about a shop, right?
Yeah, we'll start with shop. I think the things in the field tend to be more opportunistic, right? It's kind
I
of like they're
agree.
driving by and
Yes.
Good way to
uh,
put it. Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's been my experience that if there is some kind of a call made to OSHA, like there's an eye, something, you get an eye out or an eye out, or you have an overnight stay in the hospital, or an amputation, or God forbid, fatality. Anytime you make a phone call to them, they are going to come out to your site and they are going to evaluate what happened. So rest assured, if you make a call to them of something of that nature, you will see them knocking at your door, and they will not tell you when they're coming. They will just show up at your door.
now is that going to include any other type of like workman's comp type claim that might occur? Do they get a heads up about that, or sometimes yes,
What do you
sometimes no?
mean, like a workman's comp
Like
claim?
someone just got hurt doing something, not
No,
nothing major, but
no. What I'm saying is, if it's something that you must, because there's certain instances where you must. It's the law that you must make a phone call to OSHA and tell them. When you do that, they will come to you. They will come and visit you.
If there's a reporting agency involved, they might reach out to OSHA.
Right.
If there's a police report involved or something of the sort,
Right. A
they
while
have.
back, we had a driver, a truck driver that tried to back into one of our spots, and he actually hit a sign, and he damaged a sign. And I said, "Listen, you got to pay for this. You broke the sign." He said, "Well, if you call my company and tell them that I did it, I'm calling OSHA, telling them that I can't. It's not safe to pull up." OSHA called me. He called him, and OSHA called me and asked me for a couple of pictures, and that was it. So there's an instance where somebody might turn you in, and then they just make a phone call, and then that'll be that. That can happen as well.
Yeah. We just did our thing on methylene chloride. So methylene chloride is behind the bullseye. It's in the crosshairs right now. And if OSHA learns that the sign industry uses methylene chloride, regardless of the quantity and how what we've already determined, we're going to be on a list. And so they have what they call targeted inspections,
Right.
which probably apply more so on off-site workers than they do unless you're really fabricating a lot of stuff. Um, but that might be one example. They might come to the actual physical establishment where the offices and shop are, is
it's like
because they have a campaign.
yeah, it's like a hit list. Like these are the things we're looking for right now.
Yep.
Well, right now,
Priority.
the OSHA has a campaign on warehousing because there was a lot of injuries in the warehouses. So if you are a warehouse, they make random calls at different warehouses. That's one of that's a nationwide uh, thing that they got going on now.
So it sounds like they just kind of take incidents that happen and kind of just average it all together and kind of pick and choose random companies, or they go after the ones that have the issues, but they also kind of randomly choose other companies that are in those styles of like with warehouses. It's like, okay, this guy, he runs a warehouse, let's go see him, but he doesn't. We'll skip him, and they just kind of is that kind of.
Could be. I mean, I think it's I guess it's kind of random. I think if they deem that there's a necessity, they will they will stop by and pay you a visit.
Yeah, I suspect they would go after repeat offenders, people
Yes, I
who've had
agree.
issues before.
Yep.
Not no forklift training. You're definitely towards the top of the list, I would think.
Yes, I would think so as well.
If that was my job, that's how I would do it. I'm gonna go check out 10 of them and then go check out one clean guy.
So those are some things that would kind of trigger them to show up at your door, or in some cases, go inspect the people out in the field. Now, in terms of like what people should actually expect when they visit, can we kind of walk through that a little bit in terms of like, this is what you should have prepared. This is what they're going to do. This is what they're going to ask for, etc.
Well, we know that the first thing that they do is they walk in, and of course, they expect you to ask for their credentials. So that's not slighting them. That's not, what I mean? They expect you to ask for them. So, and you should do so because you don't know who it is. Then they have a beginning conference. They'll tell you why they're there. Then you sit down with them. They'll want to see your OSHA logs, your OSHA 300. They'll go through all that. Once they go through that and they take down the information, they may ask you a few questions. Then if they're coming because of, say, an amputation happened in your shop, then they'll want to go and see where it happened. And then they'll start asking questions why it happened. At the same time, they'll look around as they go. So when you have to figure out how you're going to take them there, so you take them through the path of least resistance. You know what I mean? Where is the best way to take them? They will definitely pull employees off to the side by themselves, and they will have a conference with an employee. They will talk to them, and you don't have to be there. They'll ask them questions. Then they'll come and they'll look at whatever it is that caused the issue. They'll take pictures. When they take pictures, you should take pictures. If they ask questions, anything, you should take notes of what they say. Again, one of the biggest things that I advocate is don't answer more questions than they ask you. If they ask you a question, you answer it. You don't elaborate at all. You just answer the question.
And this universal you that should be somebody who's trained to handle a visit.
Right.
Shouldn't be just anybody. Somebody should have gone through this and practiced it, in meetings and in training, so that they don't miss any steps, and that they're compliant, as well as protecting your assets, protecting the company as well.
Can I interject a couple of thoughts here?
Yeah.
So when the OSHA inspector shows up, more chances than not, they're going to show you their credentials because they expect you're going to ask. They know that they have to show them. So
Right.
more times than not, it's in the rare situation or cases that they show up and they don't bust out their ID, but more times than not, they will show it. But we, as far as training, we tell folk, yes, make sure that they do provide identification. During the introductory meeting, they will discuss the scope of their inspection, what they want to look at. And to your point, yes, definitely take them to the path of least resistance. All record requests, everything they're going to want to review has to come in writing.
Right.
Everything has to come in writing from them. And in response, whatever we send them, we should have copies of exactly what we send them. Now, during the tour, the facility tour, make sure that obviously that they're escorted, and that I recommend that you have a scribe to take notes. And then when they're asking questions, answer, to your point, definitely be very direct. Don't make any assumptions or guesses, but give them facts only and don't elaborate. Just answer yes, no, whatever it is, but be short in your answer, but yet truthful in your response. And then as far as employee interviews, they can do those ad hoc while they're on the facility tour only if it does not interrupt operations significantly, abrupt or alter operations. They can't do that. Now, if it's a quick, hey, how's it going? What's this? You know, a couple of questions, probably not a big deal. But if they're going to do a deep dive interview with employees, they will set up a time. They will coordinate with the site point of contact when and who they will interview. And that employee has the right to have another company representative there, whether it's an attorney, whether it's the plant manager, safety manager, whoever it is. They have a right to also have somebody in that room with them. So I just wanted to make a few clarifying points there.
Now, another point is if someone shows up and the person who's the best person to really answer their questions isn't available, like right at that moment, is it okay to tell them you need to hold on for a little bit while we call the appropriate people when the OSHA inspector gets there?
Absolutely. I would always default to that. If you are not the best person to answer that question, or you know that you could be maybe speculating because you aren't the subject matter expert, just tell that to the OSHA inspector, and, you know, even offer a time where they can have a one-on-one discussion with them about that particular question or topic. Absolutely. Yes.
And Amanda, the request for documentation, that you said that has to be in writing. So if you don't have it available when they first introduce themselves or during the opening conference, they still need to request that in writing?
In my experience, it has to come in writing. And it has. When OSHA did show up at my doorstep, they talked about the documentation that they wanted to see, but they also said, we will send you everything that we want to review in writing. So that is typically the way it's done. And if it's not, I wouldn't just willy-nilly just give them information. Oh, you need an OSHA log? Sure, here it is. You know, because your company hasn't had the chance to fully vet the information or vet the documentation that you're going to send them. So I would make a request to OSHA if they don't offer it, to send the request for documentation in writing. So there's an official record of what they need.
Yeah, it's been my experience that when they showed up, and it's happened to me a few times, that the only paperwork that I have provided with in the initial inspection is the OSHA 300 log. Now, and I've showed it to them because I know that the OSHA 300 log that I keep, I know it's correct and it's accurate. I agree with Amanda as far as any other training documents or any other thing of that nature. It's my experience that the inspector at that time will not ask for that stuff. They will say that we may need it, but they will go and they will do a once they take all the information from the visit, they'll do a little bit of investigation, they'll take notes, they'll get stuff together, and at that point, they will request, I don't know, lockout, tag out, fall protection, PPE, whatever training logs pertain to what they're investigating. At that point, they will ask for it.
Just to clarify, go ahead, Amanda, first.
And I was just going to expand a little bit upon the facility tour, to the earlier point that was made about if they take a photo, definitely take a photo. We should as the company, but make sure we take it of the same vantage. If they zoom in, try to see, you know, how far they zoomed in. If they take video, make sure you also take video. Try to simulate and get the same documentation that they obtain as possible. So it's comparable.
So coming from the perspective of we're all this is the safety professionals group, right? Some people have someone in the shop who like does the training for the field crew, or they have an outsourced person. So in terms of keeping the training logs, right? The OSHA 300 is what, just the basic log of like this is what occurred when. Is that right?
Injury
When
log.
there's
Oh,
a recordable accident,
oh, okay.
recordable
So
injury, and recordable injury.
okay. Is there just your training logs in terms of what you did when? Is that like something else that's really important to them? Because I don't know if everyone keeps great records of all of that.
You should, because if you don't
Definitely very
keep
important.
records, it didn't happen.
Yep. Yep. No
Is that
certificate of completion. It didn't happen. You could have everything else. Yeah. And if it's kind of like, it's just, okay, so you did train them. They're going to take it down another notch and say, well, did you train them appropriately for the job that they're doing? That's the next question they ask. It's not, and then that just opens the next door. So, but yeah, documentation is key. You can't document enough.
so
Yeah.
that's why most of those things that we've posted on the WSA website that include like a quiz at the end and the sign-off sheet, or at least the sign-off sheet. That's important to have all of that as part of those records, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you should have,
I say, yeah.
you should have, oh, I'm sorry, Edward, go ahead.
I'm just agreeing. Yeah, you should definitely
Yeah,
have that.
you should have a brief explanation of what you trained on, and then you should have who trained it, and then everybody should sign. We do is I have them print their name and then with their signature. And even if it's like our install, sometimes it's a 10-minute thing before they go out on Monday morning. I document it all. If it's a toolbox talk on site, document it. Document.
Now, does the documentation help you if something happens, or it just helps to show OSHA that you're actually conducting trying to make a safe work environment and that you're being diligent about your job?
Yes.
Yes to both. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It'll help reduce fines. It'll show your commitment to safety. I mean, in essence, that's your proof. You could have a conference room full of C-suite executives all saying, yeah, we do that, we do that, we do that. But without the
Like,
pudding, there is no proof.
Well,
like Bill, you were saying that you had an issue and then you showed OSHA that I've been a part of this program for the past 6 years, and that helped.
I sent documentation that ProSigns had participated in the national stand down for fall safety for 6 years. And each year you can get a certificate from OSHA, and I did it every year. And we have different kind of trainings, and I bring in other people and all that. I sent that, and I am convinced that they loved that, and that reduced my fine.
So if you're doing documented fall protection training and then someone gets caught in the field without their harness, messing around in a bucket truck, it's hopeful that it would help reduce the fines, you being able to show that documentation.
It's absolutely, it's not, it's absolutely will be helpful. Absolutely, because that's exactly what happened to us. Exactly. I mean, the guy wasn't wearing it. He was up there, and the OSHA inspector, while he was on site, wanted to talk to me. They were in Pittsburgh. I'm in Philadelphia area. Oh, sorry. There. They were in Pittsburgh. I talked to him, and we kind of talked back and forth, and he realized that we did have training. I mean, I had trained those guys the prior 2 months, two different things. One was bucket truck safety and one was fall safety, and he was messing around on both things. And they listened to me and they realized it. And luckily, the installer was respectful, sorrowful on site because he knew he messed up, and all those things ended up being in our favor. Those fines started, they can start at $16,000, and it ended up being like $2,500 when it was all said and done. Yeah, big difference.
I think one of the things we're going to touch on in just a minute is that severity of penalty. But I did have one other question before that, which is this has come up within our discussions with our group before, but people in the field, right? In the shop is a little bit different than an OSHA inspector showing up in the field. If they show up in the field, is there anything in terms of preparation that the guys out there should be anticipating in terms of this is what they may ask for, or this is like the type of questions we may get?
I believe, yes, they're gonna ask the same questions. They're gonna, a ladder that doesn't go 3 feet above the parapet that they're accessing the roof from. They're gonna ask about ladder training. Now, and I'm a little sketchy on this. I think the employees on site can ask OSHA, the official to call the office and still speak with somebody else. But they should at least have the wherewithal as to not just spit out information, be respectful, but also, they're going to, that's evidence. Anything they say is evidence, and it will be held against them.
Yeah, they have to, we have to have on site, you have to have a competent person on site that has training in whatever they're doing.
Whatever they're getting called out on.
Right.
So for guys on site, that's a lot.
It is
Fall
a lot.
protection, lockout,
Competent
tagout.
person, it means someone who is that's a designee. That's not someone who is competent in their job. That's someone on site who is what's the definition of
Well,
competent
that's what
person on the
that
site?
is basically the same thing. That's the same thing, Grant. I mean, if you're competent in your job and you know what you're doing, OSHA will redeem, if you have the experience to do that, and you have some training in that particular, like fall protection, or like Edward said, ladder, you have training in that, you would be a competent person. Like, you know that if you go up to a ladder and there's a broken rung, that you can't use that ladder. You know that, so the competent person is a little loose, but still you have to have the experience.
So typically it would be like the lead person. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and they would definitely have to know that they're the competent person, as would the other two on site, so that they know who to point the finger to, because if they approach the wrong one and say, who's the competent person on site? I don't even know what a competent person is. Competent at what?
Right.
Is it because they have the authority to stop work in order to remedy? Okay.
Yes.
That is one of the criteria, that they have the authority to recognize a hazard and to halt work until the hazard is remediated.
Yeah.
But let's clarify that it's not just a small hazard, it's going to be a significant hazard for them to shut down the operations of something that would result in a significant or severe injury or death. That's when
but that's not what we're saying. We're not saying whether they would shut something down. It's just that the person who's running the job has to be a competent person.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but yes, you're right.
In order for them for multitasking.
Yeah, if you're right, if they're insinuating that they need to shut something down, you're right. It can't be because some silly little thing. I don't know what it would be, but it has to be something significant, that there's a imminent danger of someone that could really get hurt.
Yeah, I would think there's definitely some training involved for our employees that are out on remote job sites, because I think the biggest difference is if you are approached on a job site or working remotely, there's 99% percent chance that that inspector has photos of whatever he's talking to you about already.
Right.
You know, unless somebody called, said, I saw a guy using a ladder, it doesn't look safe. You know, they might show up if they're close enough for that. But there's a good chance that they already know why they're there.
But and what that really means though is sometimes they're just driving by and they saw it, right?
That's what happened to us.
Yeah.
That's
Eating
what happened
lunch.
to us, Grant. He was pulling in to get gas, and we were at a
Yeah.
gas station.
Same
Lucky
thing.
us.
Same situation. They were eating lunch in their car, taking pictures of our guys on the roof.
So for field personnel, if they have a question, it's okay to call the office,
Yes.
and so it's they don't have to like be Johnny on the spot and like field everything entirely accurately right there. They can ask questions of the office, right?
Sure.
So they
It-
have my lifeline. I want to make my lifeline call.
Yeah, I would definitely, you know, whether it's right or wrong, I would make it known that I need to call the office
Right.
because that's how I was trained.
Sure.
I'm happy to talk to you, but my training and my responsibilities to my employer, I need to call in.
That's the smart thing to do. Absolutely, Edward.
Yeah. Yeah, and as respectful as possible.
Right.
Tail between the legs and everything.
As long as you're respectful, they are fine. If you're a smart ass, or if you get confrontational with them, that can only result in bad things.
Yeah. It's a speeding ticket you'll never talk your way out of.
That's
Never.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
We had touched on this just a minute ago, but around this, what are the penalties, the gravity of the penalty? What are your rights once you receive one? Can you talk a little bit about let's start off with just the gravity. There's like different stages of the types of citations you can get, right?
Right. There's like 4 stages. The highest is somewhere, I believe this year, somewhere around $16,500. Now, it's my understanding that those very steep penalties are usually for the bigger companies. So if you're a 5-man sign crew, and that's how big your company is, they're not going to hit you unless it's an egregious thing. They're not going to start there. You know what I mean? They may start at $10,000, and then you talk to them, and at any time when you get a fine, you always request an informal conference. And at that point, you're able to talk to them, and you're able to 9 times out of 10 to get a reduced amount of fine at that point. You know what I mean? You don't, you absolutely, you just want to do that, to talk to them. You know what I mean? And at that point, they'll discuss their findings. They'll discuss why they're fining you. And then they'll give you an opportunity in Pennsylvania. One of the things that they'll say is that we've talked about the consultation programs. They'll say and I know I got hit in Jersey. And I went there, and Jersey said to me, he said, well, if you go and get consultation program, and I said, well, I just went through it. So they said, well, we'll half your fine. You know, so there is some negotiation.
There's actually 3 main penalties that have financial implications, and the highest one is willful or repeated. And according to 2024 stats from the OSHA website, it's approximately 160,000 per violation.
Willful,
And then,
yeah, right.
yeah, willful or repeated. And then there's other than serious, and then serious.
So an example of willful or repeated. Repeated is obvious. We got
Mhm.
caught doing the same thing that we got caught 3 months ago.
Willful
Willful.
willful is something that, hey, we recognize as a company, and we have this major gap. And there's even some documentation that maybe we submit to OSHA where that demonstrates that the company had knowledge that there's this particular gap, but we choose to do nothing about it.
Right.
So that's what a willful is. It's you know about a problem, you have an opportunity to correct it, but you choose not to.
Yeah, it costs too much to fix it, so we're just not going to deal with it.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and what's an example of severe? Severe, I think, would be bodily injury,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I
Where
think if
you're-
like if you were digging a ditch, if you were digging, you were down 6 feet and you had somebody down there without any protection, any blockades at all, and trenching, yeah, that'd be pretty serious.
Yeah.
I forgot there's also failure to abate. That's
Right.
another category of OSHA penalties. So if they come out and they cite you for a fall protection issue and they come around a couple months later to do a follow-up and they see that you haven't abated it, you'll get nailed for that. And there's a heavy penalty for that as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, does that include things that they might observe when they're on a on-site inspection of the shop? Things like, there's stuff with extension cords or machine guarding. If you didn't fix it, they can hit you even harder when they come back.
Oh, yeah. If
Yep.
you failure to abate, yep, they tell you to fix something, you don't fix it, that's failure to abate. It may not be the $160,000, but if it's like an extension cord thing, but it'll definitely be more than you originally got fined. And if you get that a couple of times, then you go on, as Edward said, you'll be on a list of a company that doesn't fix what they tell you to fix, and they'll keep coming around until you do.
You're muted, Amanda.
A failure to abate is about $16,000 per day for every day that violation went without being abated. So that can stack up pretty quickly.
Oh, and something else that OSHA started. It used to be like, they say that there's a group of 10 guys and they're working and there's stuff going on above and nobody's wearing hard hats. Used to be where they'd hit you for PPE, no hard hat, it'd be a fine. Now they can fine for each employee for that hard hat. So they started that. And I don't know if it was this year or last year, but I know that now 10 times whatever that fine is, they have the ability to fine for each one. But here's the thing. I know we're all talking about this OSHA, terrible OSHA. They want to make things safe for people. You know what I mean? If a company is not abating, if they're not taking care of it, then shame on them. I don't know how I'm sure all you guys feel the same way. What if it's your son or your daughter working there? Do you want the company they're working for to be safe so that they come home to you every day? I mean, they're not out there to screw companies. They're there to make things safe for the employees. And it made a significant difference from the 70s. Now I was there in the 70s. I'm an old guy, but it's made a significant difference, in the safety of workplaces. And that's what they're there for. And I, for one, applaud them for it.
Yeah, I think if you go in we've been talking about surprise inspections and surprise visits. If you go the other route, what we did earlier on our committee and invited them in, they actually are willing to work with you. They're fairly open-minded, because they're not there. They're there to help in that regard. It's kind of like going to the state police to learn how to drive. You know, if you could do that, the state police are there to give you tickets and tell you you're doing it wrong. OSHA takes it one step further, and they'll help you if you ask for help.
That's right. And they want to help you.
It's a good thing to keep going. And we talk about lowering penalties, and the idea there is instead of paying the penalty, if you have that documentation, you can take that savings that you've had in that penalty and keep your health and safety program going.
Great.
So if you have that documentation, if you have proof that you're spending money the right way, they're going to let you keep a bigger chunk of it so that you can keep doing the right thing. It's a different way to look at it as well. If you have somebody full-time on staff, you look at their salary the same way. That's an investment in the entire organization. So, and I would think if you don't have somebody full-time on staff, you probably designate a portion of their hours worked per week towards a safety program. Robert, you probably would fall into that category.
I do.
Yeah. So if you document your own hours, that's money that the company is investing, for the health and welfare of all the employees there. So that's money spent too.
Edward, you had mentioned something, and our group has discussed it on our committee calls, and we published something, I believe, in the newsletter on this, but it's that consultation program. I don't think we've done anything dedicated on a webinar on that yet. Can we just do like a couple minutes to explain what the consultation program is and how it works?
Well, I've had
It's
the
your baby, Bill.
consultation program every other year for probably 20 years. And it's in Pennsylvania. It's called IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. And they work closely with OSHA. And what they do is they come in and you designate what you want them to look at. So if you want them, whatever it is you want, if you want them to do a full out and out, they'll do that. If you want them to come and look at your fall protection, if you want them to come and look at your machine guarding, whatever it is you want, you specify. They come in, they look at it, they evaluate it, they tell you, and they kind of do something like OSHA. They'll have a conference when they first come in. They'll look at your OSHA 300, then they'll do their inspection, then they'll go back and they'll have a closing conference. Same thing as OSHA does. Then what they'll do at that point is they'll tell you right then and there what their findings was and what they feel you need to do to abate whatever it is the problem is. I believe it's within 6 or 7 working days, they'll send the paperwork in. But they give you the advantage of starting to work on whatever it is right then and there. Then they'll give you a specified time on how to abate whatever it is. And it's usually, I want to say it's 90 days. I can't remember exactly. It should, because it happens every year, but it's changed a little bit over the years.
Negotiable.
They'll give you a certain amount of time, and then you abate it. You maybe take a picture of it, you take documentation or whatever, you send it in to them, they say, okay. And that's it.
So it's a consultation program. You invite them in, but it's like an OSHA inspection without the threat of an immediate fine associated with what they find.
Exactly. And what you'll hear is that, well, if you don't fix it, we'll call OSHA. Well, I've been dealing with the same 2 ladies for probably 15 years, and they said that they have never called OSHA. And here's why. Because if they called OSHA, nobody would call them. So it would you know what I mean? If you thought that you're bringing someone in here and to look at something, and maybe you were having a problem, you couldn't do it. If you thought they were going to call OSHA, why would you call them in? That doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? So
I did talk to Texas Oshcom because I did look into the program, and I talked to the area director who informed me that once issues are identified, you have 90 days to abate, and then you can file for an extension, and you can do that up to 3 times. So you have 120 days to fully abate their laundry list of issues. After that, he said they will notify OSHA. He gave me statistics on how many companies here in Texas he's reported. And so I took him at his word that here in Texas, that's what he did. He had no reason to not be truthful with me. So that was the information he gave me.
So obviously different organizations do it differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So each state has some type of consultative program. Sometimes it's through a state agency, university, independent, etc. And I think that that's listed on their website. And it sounds like a little differences in how they handle it, but they give you time to fix it.
Yes.
Is the nice thing, at least. But you just the expectation that you would fix it, and you can only ask them to look at one thing. It doesn't have to be everything at once,
If
because
that's
then
what you
they
want.
could be it could be too much. Your list could be too long.
Pennsylvania, that's the way it is. I don't know, like Amanda was saying, Texas. I don't know if they do the same thing in Texas, but that's how it runs here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, here in Texas, they offer 2 services. One, they come in at like a 30,000-foot level and just do a high-level review of the facility. And then they also will come in and do a deep dive and really get into the weeds, and really dig in on the details of your safety program.
So that's an interesting way to get ahead of the problem, I think, beforehand. I talked to a lot of members, and there's just a general, sense of fear around this. And I think even though we know that OSHA's there to protect people, there's also this kind of, some agents have this kind of gotcha mentality, kind of like the
Sure.
fire inspectors do, where it's like, I'm going to find something, I know it, I'm going to get you. So
Well, there's a pretty good chance that if an OSHA inspector comes on your site, that even if you think you're 100%, they're going to find something. And I think a lot of your members are owners, and I think that's the mentality. The owners, what I mean, they're the ones that would think that their OSHA's out to get them. It's just kind of the way and I get it. I understand.
As a new guy that's started doing this with the past year, I have fear. If they were to show up, am I going to fumble what I'm supposed to do? Am I going to just look like a complete idiot, not knowing what I'm supposed to do? I mean, yes, I have the ability to get some help on the outside, but I still have a little bit of fear that, if they show up, am I going to be able to, with what I've been doing the past little while, has it been enough? Have I been able to benefit my company with the things that I've been doing and teaching and trying to help the guys out there in the field? Hopefully they know what they're doing, and that's, it's just a little bit of a fear for me that I haven't had the opportunity yet to speak with any OSHA. What do they call? I forget what they're. But I just, it's a little scary. It is.
You would be surprised. The first time I dealt with it, I think I felt the way you did. And once I dealt with it one time, it gave me a lot of confidence. Just the little bit that I know you will be fine. You know what I mean? They're there to help. They'll realize that you're doing the best you can. You know what I mean? You're doing all you can to make it a safe work environment for the people that work at your company. So I think you'd surprise yourself at how well you would do in that situation. I really do.
Thank you.
any other thoughts from anyone in terms of kind of what, for the people who are less experienced, who haven't been through before and have some level of fear of the unknown? Any other closing thoughts?
Yeah, after I talked to the area director and got some more information on what services they provide, I opted to not forward with them at this time. There's a couple of things that I know that they could possibly find. And I think, Robert, I think if you are going to go into this exercise with this company or organization, just be confident first that you don't have any red flags and that would prevent you from closing out in the time allowed, whatever time period that would be for you. Just make sure that, boy, I know for example, our SDSs are all out of date and they've got an intra dust on them, boy, that's going to be a red flag. And I promise they're going to look at that stuff, part of the HAZCOM program. And
Yeah.
just know that if they find something like that, that you have X amount of time to close out that action item. So if you know of something that, like I said, would be a red flag, that, boy, let's think about that. If they were to find that, could I actually complete that? My feedback would just be confident in your safety program. And if you come across any flags, red flags, or if you know of anything that would, cause you to, have an action item, that you would be able to take care of it in the time given. That's all.
Yeah, and this goes a suggestion for training, and that goes for ourselves mostly. But to say, I sure hope my guys know what they're doing, should be replaced with, we replace every available resource to train our employees in such matters. You're saying the same thing, but one of them is much more appealing to a government entity.
Yeah, I definitely see
Semantics matter. Yeah. I know we're talking amongst ourselves, but if you say it out loud once.
No, that's helpful.
Hey, this is Kevin. Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Just on Grant's final comment. Two things. One, I want to thanks to this group. Very valuable, and safety is obviously huge project concern, and appreciate everybody's efforts. And then secondly, as a small business owner, I've sat across the table with these OSHA inspections a few times early in my career. And probably the couple of takeaways I've had is, one is, Robert, you talk about, I guess, just making sure you have your programs in place. So if an OSHA inspector comes in, what I found early, if you don't have your general stuff done, then they start digging deeper. So if you're able to meet an inspector, provide your proper 300 logs, provide a booklet of training logs, provide your MSDS, like that's 90% of it. And then they realize you're probably doing the things you're trying to do, versus if an inspector shows up and you don't have any of that. And that's from personal experience in my early days 20 years ago. Then they start digging deeper. So if you're able to kind of show that you're doing the right things, I think that goes a long way with them. Kind of mainly my point that you're trying to do the right thing.
Absolutely, Kevin, I agree.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
No,
Thanks,
thanks for
everybody.
sharing
Share.
that, Kevin.
Good
That's a
share.
good perspective.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My office just got real busy, so I had to mute.
Well, I think with that, we can kind of wrap this portion of the segment up. So thanks again for everyone who was able to participate in that discussion, and for everyone who's joined today. Now we get to the fun part, which is the Q&A, which, just so everyone's aware, this discussion, this committee has had a couple times before, and it's been a culmination of all the Q&A we've had amongst ourselves, like repeatedly. So that's that's part of the reason we get together, is because there's a lot of stuff you don't know until you start asking. So if people just want to go ahead and put in that little Q&A section any questions you have, we can have the group address those. But you got to actually put something in there. And I know there has to be questions. There's 43 people on this call. You can't tell me that no one has a question. Shoot, we'll start asking ourselves questions. Hey, Andrew, that thing with the machine guarding that you couldn't, it was really hard to create a guard for that machine. Did you ever get that resolved?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
We did that resolve. That's a little time in the fabrication department in place. Conversation, just reached out to the safety guy at Department of Labor and said, hey, there's nothing factory made about this, but this is what I'm putting up. And
Oh yeah, yeah. And you had signage for stuff too. It was like a big one,
yeah,
right?
big one, a lot of big
All-
one.
Okay, so we do have some questions coming in. Here's a good first one. Can we turn away an ocean inspector?
Yes. Until he shows up with a court order.
And the other one, I think that
Do you want to type the answer on that one?
I'll just hit it.
I mean, that's an actual good question. I mean, if they come and they knock and they show you credentials and they are, you confirm that's who they are, you have to take with a grain of salt. You turn them away, they will be showing up with a court order from the judge. So they will show up. May not be an hour or two, depending upon their schedule, upon their workload. But when they come back, it's not just them. It's not that one person. Now they're going to bring friends, a lot of friends. And they're not going to look at just one item. They're going to start walking in lots of directions. So,
And to interject on that, yes, if you have a situation and they do show up and you're like, geez, everybody who can answer them questions isn't here. Can you come back another time? Would probably be your better answer than saying, no, go away. Again, it's the respect you give them is the respect they'll give you, but you may get an additional inspector to show up, but yes, it is your right to request them to come back. But, give them the reason that the people who can answer your questions or give you the information isn't here. They're not available. And coordinate a time when, for them to return if possible.
Yeah, they show up on a Friday afternoon at 2:00 and the person at the front desk is there and you're the office guy and you're just sitting there and everybody in the shop is gone. Be honest and be open. Like, hey, we can walk you in right now, but nobody's here for you to talk to. So do you guys want to come back or do you guys want to start this right now?
Amanda, did you have anything to add to that?
No, other than Andrew was spot on with his response.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A question came in. If OSHA shows up and they find some issues, do they typically let you abate all the issues before they start the fines, or how does that work?
So you can, if you have the ability, you can abate them, but since they've already identified them as a non-compliance issue, you will likely still be cited for it. I know that was my experience in the past. We were able to abate a couple of items that they found on site, but nonetheless, they still came up in the final documentation.
I'll be honest. In my days in construction, when I did concrete construction as project manager, and they showed up, there was a lot of pop out the knife and hey, your extension cord's frayed. Turn around, and look at the guy. What? guy, y'all should have told me about this. Pull out your knife, start cutting that thing up, and drop it right up. It's no good. I've taken it out of service, and I have walked out of a couple of those before. But be ready to pull that trigger quick. Absolutely, be ready to make that decision. Say, oh, that yes, we'll take care of it right now. Cut it up. Say, oh, go throw it out in the dumpster. Get rid of it right now. You can do it. It can happen. Just be ready to be responsible. And they do take note. They really do. They say, oh, it's fixed right away. That fine. Right off the bat, they could sit there and go, okay, well, he fixed it right away.
Yes, agreed. That all will play into the negotiation process. Absolutely.
A question on like a checklist. What's a good checklist for required OSHA training records that an inspector would expect to find completed?
Checklist. It's real broad.
Well, that's an easy one, I think here. Go and type in to like, what are the top 10 OSHA violations? And you're going to find that them answers to be pretty consistent year after year. Fall protection training, hazard communication training. The top 10 are there low hanging fruits for them and all the time.
Well, if
I threw Tim on here because he asked the question. And Tim, if you're able to unmute yourself and want to ask, please do so.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to make sure that, as we're doing training, that it's as focused as possible to make sure. And that's actually a good recommendation to just look for the top 10 violations and make sure our training covers all those. But I also don't know if there are minimum specific things that are at a minimum required every year from OSHA.
yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Go ahead, Amanda.
No, you started. I'll go ahead.
All right. So, Tim, what are your job hazards at the shop? Do you have forklifts?
We have a forklift.
Okay, so 3-year certification on that. You have painters?
We have a painter. Yep.
Annual training on his PPE. You got hot work?
Hot work meaning welding.
Welding, grinding, sparks, anything with metal generating that spark potential.
Yep.
Yep, you would go through that training with everybody involved with there. Hazardous material handling, in other words, with the chemicals and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You would have training on that.
Yeah.
So you see how you start asking all the questions, hey, what hazards do we have? Those are your trainings. And that's what OSHA is going to ask you.
Mhm.
Okay.
And going back to the painters, definitely make sure if they're wearing respirators that too is covered and trained on. Mhm.
A lot of that's covered in the OSHA 10 that we were giving out free keys to for a while, right?
Hazard risk recognition for those entry-level employees.
Okay.
Teaching them common sense. If you see a cord, stop, pick it up, roll it up, put it out of the way once you're done with the tool.
Related to another question came in about painting. Shops that have painting, they're required to send employees for paint training. But you don't necessarily have to send them out somewhere for paint training, but they do have to be trained on a few specific items. Is that correct?
Yes. So whoever you're buying paint from, Sherman-Williams, Asco Noble, Grimco, whoever's out there, your paint supplier will give you some free training.
Mhm.
Ask them. Just say, hey, what can you guys help me out with my painters? I just want to make sure that they're covered on everything. Now the fit testing and the respirators, use and everything is maybe not. They'll maybe refer you to an industrial hygienist who will come in and do the fit test, make sure everything is good on the seals, kind of go over the charts about, facial hairs and things like that. But your paint companies will help you because they're not only you, but all the other clients they're having as well.
For anyone who uses Matthews also, one of our APMs, they do have a program that's free, I believe. You just have to send someone out to it. So it's like a full day or a couple days. So look into that if you use Matthews and you need someone trained. If an OSHA inspector takes someone aside to talk to them, can we take part in that interaction?
No. So if they're wanting to talk to that employee, that is a private conversation. Now, our people will start looking at me or the plant manager and start asking, "Hey, I kind of want you guys over here." Then by all means, whoever they are talking to, they can invite who they want to be a part of that conversation. So it's within their rights to pick and choose who they want. And 99% of the time, they're asking for me and they're saying, "Hey, can you come over here?" Because they don't feel like they're going to get, singled out, picked on. It's like, like, you're fine, everything's fine. Just be open and be honest. So,
Kind of a question here on, so someone said in Minnesota, we have state OSHA regulations on top of the federal regs. And I think that there are only a couple states that do this. Curious if anyone knows what the differences are between us and other states that only go by the federal regulations.
So you go to OSHA.com, they have what they'll show you on the 22 states that have their own individual plans that meet or exceed the federal guidelines. And then they will talk about their additional programs that they cover as well, such as Tennessee. I remember this one, smoking in the workplace. They have their own regulations about allowing employees to smoke in the workplace. I know in California, I know very well now that they have their own policies that available to have on the job site when working, work safe practices and everything. But you can also go to osha.gov and look that up.
For every state, because I know like
Every state,
California,
every
Oregon,
state.
typically. Yeah.
Yep. Arizona, they'll tell you who's on the federal, who's on the state program, and who you need to call.
If anyone has any other questions that they want to pose to the group, please do so now. I will also throw out there that this group has been working for it's like 3 years now, I think, and we've been digging into the areas that a lot of times are different for the sign industry than they are for other general industries. And a lot of that information is posted on the website, including information on fall protection. We have some of that DOT stuff. We have the new stuff on methylene chloride. So if you log into the website, it's up there and under training, and you'll see them all on there. And for many of those, we do also have the trainings that you can use to give the employees the trainings they need, along with that, sign off sheet at the end so that you have it documented. I don't see any additional questions coming in right now. Anything else from anyone on the group that they want to share? Well, I thank you all for showing back up and fielding these questions, for everyone who was able to participate in the full panel discussion as well. And thank you to everyone who was on the call. So thanks for showing up and trying to keep our industry safe. So with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you all.